So, football rules crankiness is kind of the theme as to where we are. On Saturday, even form lines are all over the shop. Everything about this is just, it's a mess. Armagh 120, Dublin 112 in Armagh. Like, wild kind of scoreline given what the Dubs had done the week before. Mayo beat Kerry at McKeon Park. Mayo well ahead, then almost lost it. Aidan O'Shea, some brilliant fielding towards the end. They won 21 points to 116. On Sunday, Donegal, they were, for an hour, almost outplayed by Derry and Ballyshannon, but then rallied and kicked 1-6 late on. Michael Murphy, half-time substitute. Galway and Tyrone, 118 apiece in Tuam. Shane Walsh is kind of made for a 2-point arc. So you've Galway and Donegal top of Division 1. You have a 3-way tie in Division 2, which is, as expected, turned out to be a brilliant division. Monaghan, Roscommon and Meath, all on 8 points. And then Kildare and Mickey Hart's Offaly in Division 3 are joint top, is kind of where we are. I didn't get to see much football this weekend, but are you kind of watching scorelines coming in, or like on GAA Bow or whatever? We're now at the point where there has to be some kind of like what way the wind is blowing if you're trying to follow games live.
I was watching Armagh and Dublin Saturday night and kind of half paying attention at the start, and then you were looking at it and Dublin were 15 points down at one stage, which is like bonkers.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time Dublin were 15 points down in a match, or like any sort of
against Kerry the other day?
Well, it was only 12, I think, that day.
Okay,
but like,
and it's still 2 less than what Donegal were behind Galway the week before, wasn't it?
So it is bonkers. Like, whatever about having to redraw. And I was listening to the commentary, and I assumed it was a big wind. But Enda McGinley and was it Darren Maloney doing commentary were saying, well, this isn't wind assisted. This is just down to one team going.
Have that on a ticker across the bottom of the screen. We'll come to some of the comments from across the week. Different managers are now unhappy with the rules, but will we, in a windswept country, like we are a windswept country, will we have to factor this into the rules a little bit?
Well, is there a case or an argument for 4 quarters? It obviously applied during COVID. There has been experiments in the past that you just change ends, you have a break. I think players would appreciate a break halfway through a frantic first or second half like it was in Armagh. I mean, the relentless pace of that game, it was go, go, go.
Will we still just have your quarter, our quarter wind? Like, I mean something...
Yes, but at least it's splitting the wind up.
Yeah, sure.
It's splitting the wind up. So if you have a wind for the first 17 and a half minutes, and then it flips over. So it balances. You're not that far behind.
Okay.
I mean,
at least at half time you have a better feel for what's happening.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
So, I mean, there's a very obvious, if that's a problem, and I'm not sure that's a huge problem, but just flip them over, take a minute's water break. Everybody would appreciate just to draw breath. There's only 5 subs at the moment. I think that's going to lift. But, players still need a break during these games, and they're not getting them.
No, I take that point.
But just as
not getting them around the
kickouts.
kickouts.
Is the kickouts as well. Like never before you see a team. That's effectively what happened Dublin on Saturday night.
Yeah.
You pin a team in on the kick-out, you make sure that they can't get the quick one away to the player on the edge of the arc, and you force them into midfield. And if you have better fielders, or even a small wind, or more voracious winners, like I think Dublin lost 7 kick-outs in a row or something at the weekend.
Yeah, they won 3 of their 14 in the first half. Where are you in our wind problem?
I'm wondering, is it a cumulative effect of the rules and the wind? Because the new game is streaky regardless of the conditions. I think it's because you can pin a team in, you can get on top of them and squeeze the life out of them for a little while.
We might still see that in the summertime.
I think you might see a scenario where a team loses 5 or 6 kickouts on the spin because they just can't get out.
Okay.
And then that can obviously lead to big scores and your 2-pointers and all that. But yeah, I think it could be a cumulative effect there.
Okay. Well, to give you a sense of what people are saying then, Robbie Brennan, the Meath manager, and not a sore loser here because they beat Westmeath. They're joint top of Division 2. Things are going well. They beat Westmeath courtesy of a late strike by Conor Duke, and it turns out that probably didn't beat the buzzer. So he was kind of saying, there's confusion anyway over this buzzer, even though his team benefited from the confusion. He said, start of the match, there was a hooter, then there wasn't a clock, then the clock wasn't working, then it was working. It's a mess. And then he said, the clock's at the other end of the pitch for the last play of the game. Players aren't sure what time is left. It's a bit of a joke. It's a specific problem, obviously, to the weekend. In overall terms, he said, of the rules, my own honest opinion, not with my Meath manager hat on. Not with my Meath manager hat. I think you're speaking in the capacity of Meath manager, but anyway. is that the FRC, they've lost the run of what we're trying to do here. The whole idea here was to try and protect the game. We're not doing that. That's not Gaelic football. You check a score at half time of a game and it's 17-0 to somebody. It's a joke, to be honest with you, the way it's gone. It's a mix of outdoor basketball with a breeze, soccer style defending with 11 behind the ball and zonal stuff, a bit of rugby thrown in for a few scrums around the middle. Don't like it. It's not Gaelic football. And he was asked, might there be change as a result of his unhappiness, and he was pretty sceptical. There are a load of emails going around, fill in this form, fill in that form, but I'd say it's a bit like voting. The decision's going to be made no matter what. God forbid we might have Gaelic football back again. So that was, I don't know how common that opinion is amongst managers.
It's very
out there.
surprising from a manager whose team is benefiting from the rules, or certainly
adds
thriving on the, it gives
weight-
it a bit of weight to it.
Yeah.
I think this point was inevitable at some stage, that the managers would get increasingly irked by this, because it's even like, the reason that the managers want more definition or more leeway about the length of time a goalkeeper has to kick it out is because when they're playing against the wind, they want to use every second, and they need these things. They need definitive rules. And to be fair to the FRC, they've tried to clean things up as they've gone along, minor things, and tried to be as clear as possible. But this is an experiment, and in as much as Robbie Brennan is trying to build a Meath team, trying to get promotion and everything else, there is a greater good that's at play here. And, inter-county managers, not that their opinions shouldn't be taken on board, of course they should. They're all football people ultimately, but their motivation in this is in some ways kind of self-serving. Not that any of them doesn't have a point or that they're wrong about this, but I just think that if there's a greater good at play here and we have to see some things go wrong before we can correct them, that's a part of it.
How common is the Brennan opinion amongst inter-county managers?
I'd say there's a few would be thinking along the same lines, Joe, but there is an element of not having control. Managers like control. You say Robbie is saying we're 17 points up. They can't protect leads. They can't slow the game down. Get that game, get that control, get an opposition into a grip. That's gone because of all the changes. There's so many changes. And yes, it's chaotic. But I'm not sure Robbie has been talking. He certainly hasn't been sourcing his opinion from the supporters, who absolutely, to my mind, love the game. They're talking about it. They're engaged in it. I said here last week to you, there are people now who aren't on their phones on the terraces like they previously were. They aren't turning around talking about Donald Trump, although maybe they were this weekend after Friday, who knows. But there's a lot more engagement, people, the anticipation. And yes, there's not certainty there. The 20-second rule was a guideline. I don't think it's a particularly good guideline. And I go back to that, giving the players a break because the pace has increased. There's so much more high-speed running. We've yet to see the stats for that. But it's quite clear. You look at Armagh and Dublin the other night, and it was just go, go, go. And you think, where are they going to draw breath here? Yeah. My feeling is it should be out to 30 seconds. Give the goalkeeper and the team a chance to reset. If you consider...
Peter Canavan said that's going to happen.
Yeah,
so it
is going to happen.
He's on the FRC.
I would think they're small changes. I think they'll all be small changes, what they're looking at. And if managers aren't being listened to, I think they are, because straight away I think there will be a recommendation for extra substitutions. That was an issue Jim McGuinness and Desi Farrell raised some time back. It was also a recommendation at the outset from the FRC when they launched. I think there will be correction on the 3 up when there's a red card, black card. When there's a player missing, teams will have to keep 3 up. They won't be able to bring the number of that down in the structure rule in accordance with how many players they have. That'll be fixed. I think unintentional breaching of the 3v3, it's a tough penalty, a 20 metre, when you're just stepping over the line. You've lost your bearings a little bit. I think they'll take that into account and they'll just give a free from the halfway line. But if it's deemed deliberate, if a player just runs, sprints back to provide cover, I think that'll change. So there's small changes around the edges there that will happen. Whether there's a big structural change around the goalkeeper, quite possibly. They may only allow a goalkeeper to kick, pass or shoot beyond the halfway line. That's in discussion too. And the 4-point goal, I think the 4-point goal has to be back on the cards for Gaelic football to differentiate, to reorientate the value between a 2-pointer and a goal.
Yeah.
I think it has to be a factor.
Donnchadh, we're seeing a certain tension here between, as Colm says, I think, and I'd include myself in this, sitting down to watch a game is a more pleasurable experience now. It's just a better product, there's no doubt. But then for managers, you're asking them to enter into the spirit of this experiment, as Conor says, and some of them are not in the mood for that. Like Jim McGuinness said, my understanding now is that the tweaks, and if it is 4 points for a goal or some other change with the goalkeeper, these are bigger than tweaks. But he says,
I'd say, Joe, it would be desire of the FRC, some members of the FRC, to revert to the 4-point goal. It was dispensed with hastily after the interval.
It was very quick, yeah. But regardless, McGuinness says, my understanding is that these tweaks aren't going to happen until 13th of March. That is 3 weeks before we play Derry. If you're a coach and you want to coach to any level, you need 6 to 8 weeks to get some kind of pattern on it. So McGuinness is sort of saying, like, and he does add, by the way, I get it, the game is quick, teams are putting up high scores, people are enjoying watching it, I would imagine, he said. But and then he spat on the ground. But there's a degree there of like, look, we're trying to play ball a little bit, but this is not fair on us.
There was always going to be a period of goodwill, and early doors when you're in round 1, 2 or 3 of the league and it hadn't really had a detrimental effect on your promotion hopes, or you were maybe still in there. But now it's getting to the stage where there's actually stuff on the line, be it your promotion, your jeopardy, maybe they're planning for, Jim McGuinness has made comments about the league final being so close to the championship. Now the real stuff is coming into view, the important things, and managers' patience for all of that is just gone. It's wiped immediately. So we've had 6 weeks of being all nice about this, and 5 rounds of the league we've played now, and everyone's been nice and cooperative. And bear in mind, there was no January competition. It was great, yeah, you have to give referees time and supporters time and all this. And now the rules are getting stress tested in a real environment. Like the Mullingar example is a great one. Like that is, it's an extreme example, but it demonstrated the why the hooter, which I think we were talking about it off air, has been adopted, I think, 3 times by Congress in different ways, and is only really in use now in the men's game. And you know, the problems are being highlighted, and managers are getting narkier because they're having real knock-on effects. Where if they lose at last minute, if Westmeath lose a game to the last-minute goal in round 1, they probably shrug it off a lot easier. That goal means they're more or less relegated, I would say. So there's more at stake now, and everything is just getting amped up a little bit more.
And look, the other thing as well is, I know that this might sound a bit of like a hokum argument, but like the bottom line is, these changes are being made to Gaelic football as a sport, not just inter-county Gaelic football. You know, like the ramifications for what the FRC are proposing. You know, if they think genuinely, and they have evidence to back it up, that a certain rule will be for the greater good of how Gaelic football is played at all levels, across the board, in every county, just because the inter-county managers of 2025 are finding it annoying that the goalpost keeps switching, that's not a good reason not to change it.
I think most people, not inter-county managers, most people watching at home, I think they have an appreciation for the fact that what the FRC are trying to do here is a very difficult thing, and they've made a bloody good fist of it. And I don't know, cribbing over little this and that, and that's not perfect. I think there has to be an allowance for that. The
big one is still the goalkeeper. Can the goalkeeper immerse himself in the game beyond the halfway line as before? I think when McGuinness is talking about 6 to 8 weeks to realign, to adjust, he's not talking about 3 up, keeping 3 up if there's a black or red card, or even the crossing of the line, switching the free. That doesn't fundamentally impact coaching, but the involvement of a goalkeeper does, for sure. My guess is they might leave it. They might just tweak it, maybe to they can only kick past, but still get involved beyond the halfway line. Maybe not.
As in can't hand pass.
Yeah. Now that would be a big change. But then you know, you look at Ethan Rafferty's pass.
Oh yeah.
For Barry McCambridge's goal the other night, and you say, well, if you restrict Ethan Rafferty from coming across the line, and you see that type of pass, absolutely brilliant. Look at Niall Morgan's involvement in games, top scorer for Tyrone against Mayo, just has that surge and that jolt of energy. But I'd also ask with the 3 up, if the 3 up structure wasn't there, does Rafferty get that pass threaded through a Dublin defence to McCambridge? Does Peter Hart get that glorious pass in Chewham yesterday through to Dara Canavan? The space is there. So the 3v3 structure is one that is working really well. Hard to implement, and obviously they may make a change around the encroachment if it's incidental across the halfway line. That'd be good business. So the smaller changes around the edges, the big one is the goalkeeper.
Okay, so with due respect to him, we're not really with McGuinness in this. This is just the growing pains you have to allow for when you're trying to make the sport better, because it needed to get better. So we're going to box that away for a second. We never fully dealt with Robbie Brennan. He's saying here that's not Gaelic football. I'm not. What I'm seeing here is a mix of soccer style defending, outdoor basketball with a breeze, bit of rugby, few scrums in the middle. He's like, that's whatever I'm seeing. That's not Gaelic football. I want my sport
I
back.
wonder what is then. If Gaelic football was what it was, say, when I was growing up, like the late 90s, and it was largely man on man and your traditional positions. Is that what he's talking about as in Gaelic football? Because that hasn't been seen in 25 years. 20 years anyway. Or is the modern Gaelic football since McGuinness and Donegal in 2012? So I wonder what a starting point is for that. I'm not sure. I get his point. Sometimes some of the things that happens are a little bit counterintuitive. When you've been used to watching games like we've been covering for the last few years, and you look up and there's 40 yards of space for a full forward, it's nearly unnerving. It's nearly sort of like, how did that happen? You'd have to readjust to it. So, but the more reps you get at this thing, I think it becomes more natural. But definitely at the beginning, there was sort of an unnatural feel to some of it. And I've said here before, I think that the scenario of someone kicking a ball into an empty net, I find that one kind of, it's
silly,
just unfulfilling or something. It's just like it's not a goal in what I would consider the real sense of a goal. So that there are certain things that sort of are a little bit irksome in it, I think.
Yeah, he didn't paint out his vision for what era he was talking about or what style of football.
He mentioned that it's like basketball. Was that any different last year? In fact, my memory of it was probably worse, and it was at a slower pace. He mentioned zonal with 11 back, but it was zonal with 14 back in many cases. Maybe the scrums and the rugby relates to the kickouts having to cross the
Kickouts have been the best thing.
the 40 metre arc. I wouldn't mind a few short kickouts. But obviously the rule is there, and everybody's happy with it. Like, that is one rule that people are happy about. That there's contests there. Yes, I'd have I wouldn't be averse to seeing the kick-out rule going, because I think teams will push up anyway. You can't pass back to the goalkeeper. Sure. I would have liked to have seen that experimented without the 40 metre, because a lot of the kick-outs are similar. Now, it does create lottery and chaos, but I certainly couldn't agree with Robbie that the game is more like basketball now and more like soccer defending now, because it was worse last year. Does anyone forget the start of the All-Ireland final last year and the seagull, the parable of the seagull?
I think I saw him on the league coverage recently, but anyway, go on.
The big thing that kind of got me kind of going at the weekend about football and the direction we're heading was the press that Mayo got on Kerry in their own half. It was brilliant. Like, they were kind of allowing Kerry to take a short kick out by leaving one man free in the corner, and then everybody pressed up and they went after them bald-headed. Yes. And it took Kerry so much energy to work the ball out. And that's the thing that I was looking for more than anything else at the start of the league, thinking that we'd see it in every match. And now we're seeing a team do it. We're seeing a team sort of reap dividends from it. And I think we'll see more of it as the summer goes along, regardless of whether the idea that just because you give a short kick out, you don't press the ball. Actually, I think more teams will actually do that. They will allow the opposition to take an easy kick to a player just on the corner of the arc and then press up in the corner. Because you can see a couple of times Kerry players turning around, looking to go back to the goalkeeper and then realising
you've far less ground to press. Like, you've far less ground to cover with the arc when the kick out has to go out for the arc. So, like, the pitch has been compressed from the kick out. Yeah. So it's much easier to put the squeeze on.
And, like, just on a general point, and not to be too kind of like, zippity-doo-dah about Gaelic football all of a sudden, but like, the weekend just gone was brilliant, because for the first time in a long time it looked like the league was kind of shaping up, that there were teams that were at it and teams that weren't. And then you had Mayo beat Kerry, and like, Derry gave a good count of themselves in Ballyshannon. Armagh beat Dublin easily. Galway didn't have their wings clipped, but like, in a summer when the rules almost dictate the fact that we're going to see something, at least a couple of mad things happening, big games. Now we do have this kind of famed levelling off that we've been expecting or hoping for a long time. It's very hard to... I'm glad we don't do the rankings thing that a lot of other media organisations do about football, because you'd be redrawing your thing hastily every week.
Don't knock an idea like that. That could be coming, Conor.
Literally my next question.
that could be coming. We could arrange that.
I literally wanted that 32 next. Yeah.
But if you look at Division 1, I was thinking, watching Derry out in front of Donegal, I said, if they get 2 points, that'll bring them to 3.
Yeah.
And the top team is 7. So you only have 4 points after 5 rounds. 4 points dividing the top team in one with the bottom team. But obviously Derry didn't hold on in the end, and they're still stranded on one,
Yeah.
and probably looking like the drop at this stage.
I like there won't be an incident-free weekend in the football championship this year. There will be something to
Or we'll be here some Monday afternoon and we'll be talking about Hooters or whatever it is, but there will be an issue. There'll be major issues as a direct result of one of the new rules, and we'll be wondering, how did we not see that
It
coming?
depends on the ground.
The
I just say I've never been to Hooters.
Will cause problems. Hooters will cause problems at certain venues. My sense of it is that come next October, that Special Congress will vote out the stop clock on the Hooters. They'll say no, give it back to the referees.
Because there'll be a controversy or
I think to avoid controversy. I think the Games Department in Croke Park, who were behind the implementation of it and foresaw some of the problems that have emerged. Obviously, there was Michael McKernan's kick at the end of the Tyrone Armagh game. That was on the buzzer as well. Armagh were way ahead. It didn't really matter. But it came to Cusack Park in Mullingar yesterday. That really mattered. And there are those that were present since that the shot was taken marginally after the hooter, which was inaudible almost around the ground. But still, the sense was the kick was taken just after. Yeah. That's problematic. And they're problems you can probably do without.
Yes, there'll be enough problems anyway. Don't create more. McGuinness, by the way, and it's now a year, 2, 3 of this problem being mentioned by different teams. So he's not happy with obviously the proximity of the Division 1 final to Donegal's opening match against Derry in the Championship. So league final will be the weekend of 29th, 30th of March, and then Donegal play Derry on the 6th of April, start off the Championship. So, he was saying it's not fair on sponsors in particular. You should have a competition everybody wants to actually be in and everybody wants to win. And then, I mean, it's like, talk about declaring yourself. He said, we're safe now. That was what we wanted to achieve. In the coming days, we'll make decisions that are the right thing for ourselves. So expect Donegal not to win a game for the remainder of the league, which is kind of a mad thing.
And that is counterproductive, and that's a problem of the scheduling. And that's a problem with the July conclusion of the All-Ireland Championships. There is a growing desire maybe to push it out a week into August. That'd buy you 1 week, and then the new championship format buys you another week. So somewhere I think there will be a 2-week division between the league final and the first round of the provincial championship. It's just unfortunate Derry and Donegal are drawn in the first round, the preliminary round in Ulster. That's the way it's fallen. That they're out the first week. Yeah. Not so sure Donegal would have gone bald-headed for the league anyway, and I think I would be watching the odds when they go to Castlebar for the last game. I don't think they'll be all that tuned in.
So if we take it at the league ends here, it's fun. I was like, okay, well, where is everyone? Donegal, you'd say look good. That's an uncomplicated kind of success story. Kerry,
are we doing this? Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not looking for power rankings, but I'm just like, so Kerry, I wrote down hard to know. Beside whoever I thought was hard to know. I had Kerry, hard to know. I had Dublin, hard to know. I had Armagh, hard to know. I had Galway.
Galway are flying it.
Drew with Tyrone, but hard to know.
Looks suited. I think they look suited.
Porrick Joyce is probably the only manager openly stating, we want to win the league. And he routinely quotes 1981 as the last time Galway won the league. So as a measure of Galway setting out to target a competition, a national competition, and go and win it, Galway have that ambition.
Okay.
In the way that Cork in hurling have not won a league since 1998. They're a very prominent team, obviously, in hurling. Set your ambition to go and win a national competition, box of the way.
Okay.
You've done it.
So Galway looking good then. We'll change. I'll reverse my hard to know. And then Derry, probably not so good, although played well against Donegal, but not looking great. So, not about right?
Yeah. I still wouldn't rule out Armagh out of that equation. I mean, that's
I said hard to know.
Did you? Right, okay.
Hard to know.
Armagh going down to Tralee for the next round. That's one they're not going to take casually. You don't take a trip to Kerry casually. They just about lost 2 years ago in the corresponding game. They're a different team now. Yeah. And they showed they're a different team.
I'm talking All-Ireland credentials here. Hard to know. Like that, so
I put them right. I put them right in the mix. I do. Yeah, yeah. I thought. No, they'll. Not that they'd be sated, but it's always a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
They're adding players. There is more confidence. I think the rules suit them. I think they're fantastic kickers. I think if
Brilliant fielders as well.
Brilliant.
The other night when Dublin got it back to 4 points, and sorry, it would have been 4 had Cormac Costello's brilliant point being allowed, and like for 15 points to 4, there's a fair momentum shift, and for 3 or 4 kickouts, so Andrew Morgan caught a brilliant ball above his head. Charlie O'Byrne's, they've brilliant fielders around the middle of the pitch. The funny thing, the Kieran McGeaney being the great, I won't say sort of conservationist that he is, but somebody who didn't see any problem with Gaelic football in the first place. I agree with Colm. I think Armagh, nearly of all the teams, Galway also, have the players to actually that their abilities will be enhanced under these rules.
I think they have the athletic ability.
Certainly when Rian O'Neill gets back in terms of his kicking.
Is he coming back?
Yeah, he's coming back. He'll be back in, and how he integrates back in will be a factor too.
Oisin O'Neill had a brilliant game as well.
Another great kicker of the ball.
Like Guinea having to shoot down rumours that we don't get on a couple of weeks back and stuff. You know,
he does that every year.
Going on.
I think when it comes to it, there'll be a united front to go and defend their title, and they really asserted their authority against a very good team in Dublin. Dublin had some good wins under their belt. Obviously, they are in transition, to use that word. A lot of new players, a lot of new good young players in the mix. But Armagh have experience. They have a lot going for them now. I thought that maybe they'd slip off a little bit, but be interesting to see how they come out of Kerry, because I think Kerry are lacking depth, and it's showing. They're lacking depth. Sean O'Shea is not there at the moment. Tom O'Sullivan, Gavin White, get them back in. They're a different team. But the replacements aren't plentiful, certainly not at that standard.
Where are you in Armagh, Donnchadh?
Yeah, I always thought that they were a top tier team up to last year. Now, I'm not saying I thought they'd win the All Ireland, but I thought the team that beat them might win the All Ireland last year. So I'm not surprised at where they are at all. I think, and we can't say too much about it, but what happened on their holiday had the potential to derail a team in any way, in a fashion, but they don't seem to have missed a beat from that. So that's obviously a great piece of management, just to keep the show on the road while all that is going on. And now they look brilliant. Like, teams don't do that to Dublin, even though this is not the Dublin of 5 or 6 years ago. They don't do that to Dublin, but the fact that they put on the squeeze like that, have adapted to the new rules, and I think the boys are right. I think they have both the skill set and the athleticism to make this count for them, because there are a few things that come in. If you have big athletic men, it brings you a long way. Like Meath, for example, a long time since Meath won 4 league games in a row. I couldn't even begin to say when it was. Maybe Andy McEntee, when he brought them up, they might have won 4 in a row. But they have 3 or 4 huge men that can play across the middle, and another 1 or 2 to come off the bench as well. And then all of a sudden they can put squeeze on and kickouts, and you can change the momentum of the game. So no, I think Armagh have everything they need. And in terms of the being able to repeat it, like McGeaney's 0-2 team famously would almost got themselves into a tizzy, I think, trying to win it again in 0-3. Nearly burned themselves out to try and retain the thing before they really got it up and running. So I think McGeaney will have learned from that, and he'll be very conscious of that going into this year.
Interesting. Because they were like immediately the most disrespected All-Ireland champions of all time. It's like, oh, well, they had their moment in the 30 seconds after winning the All-Ireland, you know.
But there's even fellas there that didn't look like the completed product last year. Like, I felt like Barry McCambridge was nominated for Footballer of the Year. Oisin Connaughty, who they sort of plucked from the realms of soccer, they've all improved. Like, they're developing now as players.
Conor Turbot looked better again. He obviously tapered off a little bit in Croke Park last year, and they've brought in a guy called Darren McMullen, who looks a really good footballer. He played the league final against Donegal last year. Disappeared after that, but he's a very competent footballer. When they get everybody back, they're going to be hard to beat. Obviously, Donegal they have so many resources too, and Michael Murphy back just lifts every boat.
And how, Conor, do you reconcile second half against Kerry Dublin with the Armagh performance Dublin?
I don't know. Like, the first half, it was really hard to tell from the television. I assumed that they were in trouble with the wind, you know, and they were saying in commentary that they weren't. So I'm not exactly sure. The kickouts were the big squeeze that Armagh put on and just devastated them off the kickout. They found it hard to get back into the game. Like, Kieran Kilkenny was nearly Dublin's best player, playing as an auxiliary middle third player, just trying to win the ball on breaks and kind of shuffle it on. They Conor O'Callaghan back on the pitch. Obviously they missed Sean Bugler, who had been their best player up until then, but you know, Brian Howard was comprehensively beaten, and he'd been one of the exceptional players. So how do I reconcile it? I can't really, because it was a marked disimprovement from the previous week. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There's a lot of players there who looked good the previous week that didn't look good that week, and that's part of it too, I think, for Dublin, because there's still be a couple of, like, we're probably expecting John Small to come back into the team. Cormac Costello got his first run out of the year. There will be a bit more of a familiar look to the team as it goes on now, and I think an inevitable part of that process is some of those newer players who looked pretty fresh last week. They might be kind of put on ice for another year.
Are we still like in an era where, like, geez, they might have trained heavy this week? Is all that kind of feeding into it as well, potentially?
I don't know. It's a good question. You do.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I think there's a factor. Donegal certainly the previous week against Galway looked like a team to me that had done a block, as they say. They really did. Yeah. It's as if they targeted the first 3 games against the previous 3 All-Ireland champions and then said, right, Galway, here's a team that's very much hovering around the top. Let's just put in a big week here, and we'll head to Galway and play and come away. They weren't. I don't think they were off for that. I think they're trying to measure their step here. The first 3 games were very important to them.
When you consider what Donegal face into when the league finishes versus what Dublin face into when the league finishes, it would be strange if they were both on the same kind of training trajectory.
It's certainly not a thing like it was in the past, because I think there's just a general all-round ability to sustain and to run all year round for all of them.
They're not wintering.
There was no wintering, or there's no I'll get myself ready. And even that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you could have done that because there was a nice break after the league up to the championship. It's not the case now. I mean, teams are out. They're training all year round, doing something all year round, staying in good condition. It's not as big a factor. No. It struck me that maybe Donegal just upped it a little bit for that week.
We don't have time to open a whole, like, how the GAA does things. Colm, you talked about the lack of kind of promotion pre-league. Even with the league, like, this kind of reading the tea leaves quality is a bit tiresome, and you're like, you try to follow it during the week, and then you listen to radio on a Saturday. It's like, well, they've made 8 changes to the team during that. You're like, this whole thing's like a mess. You're as well off just not sweating it at all. See what you see, but don't sweat it, and we'll reconvene in April.
They're nearly like a series of organised international friendlies. Like, if you were going to try and draw like a comparison from somewhere else, because there's no real form lines. Like, honestly, going into this weekend, I thought it was obvious there was a demarcation of teams that were going to like, I saw Mayo against Galway a couple of weeks back, and no harm to anybody, but I was just about fit leaving there to draw a line through them in Castlebar. I was like, they're at nothing. It doesn't matter who they get back, they're too far away from Galway. And they were brilliant at stages against Kerry in the same field 2 weeks later. So that just shows you how
they weren't great against Tyrone either now. In that game. That was a really poor game. That's the one outlier, I would say, in the league was Mayo Tyrone. I'd be on Robbie Brennan's side for that game. It was really poor and really static on that occasion, and neither team wanted to come out of their defensive shell for anything. But second half against Armagh, Mayo brought chaos. Mayo teams do generally thrive with a little bit when it's a little bit disorderly. They will thrive, and there is an athleticism about them that they can break and bridge gaps. And Aidan O'Shea makes them a better team, no matter what they say about him. This time of year, they're a better team with him involved.
Final thoughts, Donnchadh? What are we to make of it all? Crankiness is back.
Yeah, well, there's always, like, round 4 or 5, there's always a sort of a little bit of settling, I think. There's sort of, you might see a team who've, got out of the blocks really quick and they come back to the pack, or a team that maybe has started slowly and they get up to a couple of points on the board. So there's always this sort of a settling element around this stage of the league. Just going back to the promotion thing, like, I don't think the GAA knows how to promote itself, because it never had to. It's this vast organisation that is in the hearts and minds of every parish, etc., etc. And if you look across and say something like the League of Ireland at the minute, which is absolutely flying now, and I covered a lot of League of Ireland going back 15 years or maybe more, and like those players they nearly felt duty bound to promote the thing, to take a call, to talk about the league. Just couldn't be more different than the GAA. And I'm not sure we know how to pull ourselves out of it.
I'm at the point now where we should just you don't name teams during the week. If you're going to make if you're going to make a farce of the whole thing.
We've had
have you?
editorial.
We've spent hours in editorial.
I didn't realise.
And we've been talking.
ignore it.
Like, you know, unless there was something of note. You know,
This is a player back in a squad.
Yeah,
Fine.
That hasn't
we
been
don't
around.
do the,
That's noteworthy.
But I think
Kerry make 5 changes. We don't do that.
Do you not?
No,
Right.
we're not. This is the first year I think we've really leaned into that, isn't it?
Right, okay. Because I think that get together at Congress, managers, just be honest. Are you going to name the actual team? And if you're not, then just do it an hour before throwing, and we'll have the frisson of the team is in, as opposed to this phony nonsense.
But the idea that a county puts a team out to its public, forget about the programmes and that's a different argument than a team actually.
Not if you paid for your programme.
I know, but it's a different argument of what I'm about to say. But the morning a county will put out a team, the morning of the game, and by 2 or 3 hours later, it's completely different. So they've told the public, this is who is representing you this weekend, and come game time, there are debutants in that the club people of those debutants don't actually know they're involved. You think of that. There's been so many in recent times, and there's been concealment, and the coaches and obviously family are going to know, but there's some coaches, underage coaches, and people who are involved in the development of that player don't know he's making his debut for his county. It's not fair, really.
I wondered, like, this is obviously on our radar because this is what we do for a living. I wonder the people who might listen to this, or people who do they care?
Maybe not, but like this week, I was like. I happened to catch the team news, and I was, you're trying to get a sense of what's going on, and then on the day when it's like 8, I just heard the reporter that Graham was like, we've had 8 changes to the team named or whatever it was, and I thought, I'm not listening to
the
this.
manager's argument to that would be that to get to the printers for the programme, they have to name a team on a Tuesday, and that they haven't even picked a team on a Tuesday, which I understand, but why not list the squad in the programme, and then whenever you name the team, be it 24 hours before the game, be it 2 hours before the game, whatever the stipulation is then, after your final training session, that's the team you have to stick with. And if you want to make a change, you lose a substitution.
There should be a 3 or 4 hour window there where teams are submitted, and if you make a change after that, it's a substitution.
Will we go out and yell at some clouds? All right. Well, there we are. Colm Keys, Conor McKeon, Donnchadh, Boyle. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.